Welcome, everyone. We'll give you a few moments to get situated. We apologize for being late. We were working on some technical issues, so apologize for that. Welcome. If you'd like to, while you're logging in and we're waiting for everybody, go into the chat and let us know where you're coming in from today. We always like to see what kind of a global presence we have on these calls. It's always exciting to see where everybody's from. So thank you again for joining, and we'll get started in a few moments. All right, so we got Pennsylvania, Canada, Virginia, Montana, Iowa, Denmark, Wisconsin. Wow, we got quite the geographical representation here today.
Yeah, I have some people staying up kind of late to.
Yes, Hyderabad. Thank you, Robbie. Germany, Ottawa, Fort Lauderdale, Germany, London, Ecuador, Delaware, my home state. Yay, welcome.
North Carolina, my home state.
There you go. Sorry, Jeff, nobody from Tennessee.
Yeah,
Oh,
there it was, Nashville, Tennessee.
Oh,
there you go. Yeah. Awesome sauce. Lisbon, Portugal. Westchester, yes, home of QVC and Westchester University, where I have a master's degree. Denver, Colorado. All right. Okay. Well, since we got a little bit of a late start here this morning, we're going to go ahead and get rolling. Thank you, everybody, for joining. This is our webinar on tips for a successful upgrade. So first of all, we'll start off with our forward-looking statements. Notice here if there's any comments or suggestions made here that imply future functionality or capabilities in the platform, they are not guarantees. So we just have to call that out. And next, we have a few housekeeping items we'd like to make you aware of. We did save some time at the end of the webinar to do some Q&A. If you have questions that come up during the webinar, please put them in the Q&A function. You can find that on the taskbar near the chat, because we like to keep track of all the questions that are coming in. And then we can also see if there's multiple people asking the same thing, and et cetera. So please use that Q&A function. This presentation will be recorded, and it'll be shared on our community YouTube channel. Make sure that you go out there and check it out there, or share it with any of your colleagues who may not have been able to make it today. And last but not least, we'll have a survey that'll come out immediately after the webinar. And we ask you to please fill that in and give us your feedback, because we're constantly looking to try to improve these webinars and make them as helpful for you as possible. So with that housekeeping stuff out of the way, we'll get into introductions. My name is Brita Koch. I have been with ServiceNow for almost 15 years, and I am on the community team now, but spent about 10 years in the field helping customers implement ServiceNow. So I've been through a few upgrades over my time here at ServiceNow, and I'll pass it over to my colleague Paige to introduce herself.
alrighty, sorry. I was answering a chat real quick, but so I'm Paige Duffy. I've been working in the ServiceNow space for about 13 years. I think this is one of the few calls I'm on where I actually have less experience with ServiceNow. Normally that's not the case, but I have worked for quite a few customers in the past, done quite a few upgrades as a customer, and I'm just happy to share my experience with everyone. So.
Awesome. And Jeff?
Likewise, like Paige, I was a customer for a few years. That's where I, of course, first got exposed to ServiceNow. So I've been in the ServiceNow world about 14 years. Spent the past, coming up on 11 this summer, years with ServiceNow. And the majority of that spent leading engagements with customers to do their implementations, doing a number of upgrades as part of those. And now I'm part of the leading practices team, helping capture and curate good practices to implementers and customers. So I'm glad to be here.
Great, thank you. So what are we going to be covering today? Here's our agenda. So first we'll start out with governance for upgrades, which Jeff will address. Then Paige will talk about upgrade tips and tricks, how to avoid the gotchas. She'll do a demo of the Upgrade Center to help you understand how you can get the most out of that with planning your upgrades. And then I'll review a few tools that are available to you in addition to what Paige and Jeff outlined, and then we'll open up for question and answer. So before we get started, just want to bring your attention to something you should be thinking about as you're planning and scheduling your upgrades, which is our release timeline. And so recently we've moved to a policy where we're asking our customers to be N-1 or more current. Previously it was N-2, but our newer contracts are stipulating N-1. And we don't do this to punish you and make your life difficult. We do this to make sure that you have all the latest features and capabilities available, as well as the most secure version of ServiceNow, as we're always working on making it safe and secure for you and your users. So you can see that we just recently had our Washington, D.C. upgrade in March, and we'll be anticipating a September release of Xanadu. So that's just, and then 2025 will be moving into Yokohama in March. So that's just for you to think about as you're planning. So next thing we're going to do is we're going to take a real quick poll here and find out what version everybody's on. So let me go ahead and start the poll. And if you could please go in and let us know what version you're on. Boy, you guys are on the case this morning. Everybody's wide awake, jumping right in there. Awesome. So it looks like it's pretty close between Vancouver and Utah, but Vancouver seems to be edging out in front. A few people on Washington. And thankfully, we only have one person still in Tokyo. So hopefully we can help you figure out how to get upgraded, because we really don't want you to be out there. All right, so it looks like poll response is slowing down here. So I'm going to go ahead and end the poll with Vancouver in the lead with 54% and Utah behind. So thank you everybody for that. And without any further delays, I'm going to turn it over to Jeff to talk about leading practices for upgrades. So take it away, Jeff.
Great, thanks, Britta. And as I mentioned at the top, I have had experience doing upgrades both as a customer, so I've been in your chairs, living that, as well as helping to lead customers through that. And I guess just kind of on a personal note, the experience I had, which is probably not too far different from probably many of you on the call, of doing upgrades of systems before you encountered ServiceNow that were probably really difficult and long to get done, they were painful. So your coming in position might be one of feeling like this is just not any fun. Well, like some of you have already experienced based on kind of what version you're on, certainly as I began to use the ServiceNow platform, it was a joy to begin to do that, because the upgrading process, even early on, was so much easier than doing the other systems that I had responsibilities for. And so that made it so much easier, so much better to keep, current, relatively current, depending on what our operational cadence was. So I would encourage you all to have that kind of a frame of mind as thinking about this, especially as I talk about this first section about kind of governance. It's really about kind of managing the environment to enable you to do this well and to hopefully have less pain in it. So let's talk about that a little bit from an overall standpoint about governance, as you see on the slide there. So governance sometimes can make you feel like it's overwhelming, or kind of feel like a scary word, but it doesn't have to be a scary, heavy thing. So we want to think about this in terms of how governance can help provide some more value. So just as looking at that, all right, yes, let's stay on this slide. So we kind of break it down into three broad categories. So we want you to think of the overall governance like you would of your overall IT estate, right? You need to have a solid framework for decision making that aligns your organization's objectives and plans, and you need to do that also within the ServiceNow environment. And as you all, I'm sure all well know, you've got multiple instances, your prod and then your sub prods of various kinds. So you need to manage all of that in a coherent manner. So we look at that kind of broadly in three categories. So one would be your overall steering oversight, which kind of is you might think of it as kind of top level or the broadest level. Then in the middle there, you see more of the technical perspective. And then over on the right side, more looking at the things that are dealing with the change that's going to be coming your way, that come from your environment based on what your business is facing. So at the top there, you see on the left, you're kind of focused on the strategy and outcomes. The technical section in the middle, you're really looking at the execution layer from a technical perspective and making sure you got the processes, the operational level to make sure it's working right. And then, of course, on the right side there, you're looking at how you're going to manage that change. So let's go to the next slide.
Yeah, one thing I want to say before we do that, though, is if you can't do all of these as separate boards from the get-go, because this can be overwhelming, start small but make sure you have these areas covered.
Right.
Yeah.
That's very true. Yeah, great.
Really
so thanks for saying that. Because it can be overwhelming if you're just getting started in this. So that's a good reminder. You don't have to eat the elephant all in one bite, to kind of borrow that. So let's break that down a little bit. So looking at more of the foundational and overall guidance, which would be kind of that top level steering board kind of a level. So what does that bring to the upgrade need, right? So looking at some of the bullets there, the overall governance can help you set scope. And Paige will talk a little bit more about that in the tips and tricks in a minute. But you really want to be able to do that because sometimes you may feel the temptation to do more. And so you need to think about that and plan that well. The overall governance certainly also make sure that you got the right resources that you need. It could be time, money, people. Make sure that that's accounted for, and your governance really kind of make sure that that's covered. It can make sure that you have a framework for the technical processes. We'll talk about the technical on in the next slide a little bit, but making sure that you got a framework for that to make sure that you've got your interests covered, make sure your business data is protected. That's always super critical. So you need to make sure that that's always done. And making sure that your stakeholders have a way of being able to collaborate, communicate, so everybody stays on the same page.
Yeah, and you have those links to organizational change and management, which are so critical. I find even in 2024, there's still so many companies that just don't focus on that and pay enough attention to that. So that's super critical.
Right.
I'm glad you had those included on the slide.
Yeah. So let's take us down to another level. Looking at more of the technical perspective and some of the things that you encounter there. So anytime that you apply any change to your environment, you're doing any application change, you're going to introduce some risk, right? Change management is really the sister to the risk management, right? So that's super important. And upgrades, like all others, then also introduce potential risks. But your governance function, then if you've got that, oversight and from a technical perspective, it'll ensure that you've got the right risk management measures, techniques, responsibilities in place to make sure that you do that throughout the upgrade process. So I want to focus then, let's jump on to the next slide. Let's talk about kind of the upgrade communication as well. So actually, I'm sorry, go back to the prior slide once.
Sure.
Yes, I'm sorry, let's stay here for just another minute. I wanted to spend some more time on especially the top and bottom bullet. So on the top bullet, as I've kind of been alluding to, but I just want to kind of stay here for another minute. My experience was certainly borne out that if you, on the one hand, treat an upgrade as a project, as a one-off, then you don't get the benefit of that when you try to do the next one. And conversely, once you begin to establish this as this is something that our organization does all the time, based on whatever the cadence of your releases are that you want to do, then you can have really a much lower risk, a much better performance execution of those upgrades. So, if you're newer to the platform, you may not be aware of, how often that happens, and these releases will feel like they come a lot faster than you realize. But that's all part of it. And if you have a process around it, then you'll be able to manage it. In addition, the tools that we have in the platform will make it easier. Paige will talk about those a little bit more in a minute. But it's essential to make sure this is a repeatable process. You establish your roles and responsibilities, the flow that's going to be followed through the upgrade process. You got the measurable results that you're going to get from it. It's predictable. Everybody knows what's going on. Everybody can work together toward the same goals. So those are all really super important. And then as you do that, then you've got your agreed standards and policies, which is, again, part of your governance. You want to make sure that you got all the risk taken care of. So now let's go on to the bottom bullet there. Oh, sorry. Before we jump that, the bottom bullet, I want to make sure you cue in on that too, because it ties into the process thinking. Good process environment also is making sure that you learn from your processes, right? So you want to make sure that you got your learnings to come forward and to continue to improve your process, improve your testing, improve taking advantage, excuse me, of some of the tools. Again, that some of which Paige will take some time to give you some information on. All right, so then now the next slide. Sorry
Now we're
about that.
finally going to go to the next
Finally go to the
slide
next
that I
slide.
really
So,
wanted to get to.
so let's talk about communication. Communication is that oil, or the data flow that keeps everybody connected, keeps everybody kind of on the same page. And your governance oversight here, to kind of connect the dots there a little bit from governance to this. Your governance should make sure that you've got a communication plan in place to know who needs to be communicated with, about what, and when they need to communicate it, and in what form. All those are part of a communication plan. Ultimately, with the objective that everybody is in the loop, on what's going on. Everybody has the right information they need at the right time, and it helps them to understand how what they do fits into the bigger picture and what's going on in the bigger picture. So, in short, the governance is really about ensuring that everyone is on the same page, working together toward the same goals, and you achieve that outcome.
And I think you and I both, Jeff, have seen customers who are like, oh, I'll get to this later.
Yeah.
It seems very daunting, but you have to get to this right now in some shape or form, because if you wait till later, you've already allowed chaos into your environment, and it's really hard to pull that back.
That's really true. Trying to go back and fix it is more difficult than really looking at it on the front end. Although I will say the continuous improvement part is kind of where you can do that, because you're without exception, the first time you go through this, or maybe the first couple of times you go through this, you're going to find things that, oh, I wish we'd done this differently. And that's all what the continuous improvement process is about, to enable you to pull those learnings in so you can continue to improve that and make it better over time.
100%.
Yeah, I'll say that as we went through at my last company, as we went through our upgrades, we kept basically a running deck of things, and we would make changes to it after each upgrade, and then we would just continue moving forward and doing those process improvements.
Mm-hmm.
That's really the way to do it. So on that note, Paige, I'll let you take over and start talking about your tips.
Sounds great. All right, so the very first tip that we're going to talk about is limiting your scope. So if you can fly to the next slide for me. So the idea behind this is that your upgrade should be about your upgrade. So resist the urge to activate new plugins and applications. Obviously, with an upgrade, there's always the possibility that something will get activated as part of the upgrade. But I know that, especially when I was newer to ServiceNow, I wanted to turn on all the new shiny things because they're fun and they're cool, but really resist that urge, because you want to focus on your upgrade. You don't want those new enhancements to cause additional issues or to, cause defects that you're not aware of. So if you really focus in on that upgrade instead of all of those additional things, you're going to improve your upgrade experience. That's not to say don't do the new shiny things. Give it a couple of weeks and then do it. So you can already have them teed up and ready to go, but just wait it out for a little while until your upgrade kind of calms down and then do it. The same is also true of your normal ServiceNow releases. I'm not suggesting you wait 2 weeks for your normal ServiceNow releases, but if you wait a few days, maybe a week to do that instead, again, you're separating your ServiceNow release from your upgrade. So you can really focus in on what's a defect caused by the upgrade versus maybe what's a defect caused by my release. And again, you're focusing on that pleasant upgrade experience. You're letting your customers say, hey, we had an upgrade. We didn't have any major issues. They're not going to get confused because there was an issue that came from your release or from one of those new plugins thinking it's related to the upgrade. Because, you want to market your upgrade as being something wonderful and fun and easy. And then, sorry, we can go ahead and go to the next slide.
Sorry.
No worries. Next, we're going to talk a little bit about how to set your expectations early and what that means. This kind of goes back to some of the things that Jeff was saying, but communication. A lot of this is targeted at your stakeholders, but this can also apply to some of your business in general. But you want to be very open with your communication. I know that sometimes we are hesitant to do so. We're afraid of the blame that could come from it, or that everything will get blamed on the upgrade when it's not the fault of the upgrade. But that transparency is really, really important, and it helps you focus on a good experience. And some of the things that you want to upgrade or you want to communicate, especially with those stakeholders, are things like your expectations. So again, what's your scope? We're not turning on new plugins; those have to wait. We're going to delay our release by 3 days. Just clearly letting them know what that scope and what those expectations are. At my last company, when we started an upgrade, one of the slides was specifically the scope. This is the scope of our upgrade. And we would list everything we were doing and everything we were not doing. The other thing that you really want to make sure you communicate is your testing windows. So typically your stakeholders, they're probably also going to be some of your testers. If they're not, then communicate this with your testers as well. But let them know when to start testing, when to stop testing, and where they're supposed to do their testing. Again, it's all about managing expectations and making it very, very clear what they're doing when they're doing it. You also want to communicate with them where they report defects. So if there's an issue, where do we report that? How do we report that? What information do you need when we report that? So not the best way to do it, but what we did was in the defect subject, we always included the name of the release. So it was really easy to pull out those defects. And part of the benefit of that was not only to work the defects, but then we could also report back on when we did our Washington upgrade, we only had 7 defects that we had to mitigate before it went into production. And then we do the same thing with incidents. We'd relate them to our upgrade. We only had 2 incidents after our upgrade. And so those reporting and those metrics, again, were able to paint a clear picture of how successful our upgrade was.
If I might chime in with that, excellent points. So I love the things that you mentioned, because those are examples of making sure your communication plan is holistic. You mentioned several different types of communications and information to be shared and personas that be involved. You need to think pretty, holistically about it, and not kind of get in a sort of a narrow technical thinking lane. You really need to think about, all those stakeholders that are involved. Great points, I think, there.
100%.
Oh, can we go back? I realized I forgot the last 2 points. The other things that I recommend that you typically, communicate. It's always hard when someone else is navigating.
I know.
You don't necessarily know what you're going to say. But the other 2 things that I really recommend you communicate with that same group is your upgrade timeline. And what that is really, here's where we're going to, again, start our process. So we're going to clone down to dev. We're going to upgrade dev. We're going to be, dealing with our skipped records, and then you'll start your testing, and then you'll stop your testing. And then we'll have a window where we're not doing any dev work or we're not releasing anything. Whatever your process is, just communicate that entire timeline clearly to them so that they know what's going on. And then that rolls into having a go live schedule and communicating that as well. So this is just a more focused in timeline on kind of your day of, or the couple days leading up to your upgrade. So exactly what you're going to do leading up to that upgrade. We're going to clone, production down to this instance at this time. We're going to then start the upgrade at this time. We're going to then do, some UAT and production after. Whatever, again, your process is, just communicating that clearly so they know what to expect. And if you have any expectations of them, maybe you want them to get into production after your upgrade, and just make sure that everything is functional. So, again, it's all about communication.
And setting those expectations, because people may make assumptions, and if you put it out there really clearly, like you said, what's in scope, what's not in scope, bada bing, bada boom, there it is.
Alrighty. So next we're going to talk about a couple of ways to reduce your upgrade time. But before we can reduce our upgrade time, we kind of have to understand how long our upgrades are going to take. One of the best ways to do that is to do, and maybe it's not quite the correct terminology, but I typically call it an audit clone. And that is where you're going to include data that you don't normally include in your clone. So you're going to include things like the audit and log data, as well as the attachment data. And there's really 2 reasons that you want to do this when you normally wouldn't. It's going to give you a better, more realistic idea of how long it's going to take to upgrade, because it's about as close as you can get your sub-production instance to production to get a realistic time frame. So once the upgrade starts, you'll get to see how long it took on that instance before it ended. And then secondly, all comes to testing. This is going to more closely resemble your production instance, especially if you don't do automated testing. I cannot tell you the number of times I've had a tester get into the instance and they're like, oh, nothing's in the activity field. Well, yes, that's because we don't pull in the audit data. So there's not going to be anything in the activity field. It throws people off. But now that we know how long our upgrade's going to take, one, we can use that to create our changes, to create our change window, and we can see if that's an upgrade window that we're kind of willing to accept. Perhaps normally your upgrade is 2 hours, and this past one, whenever you upgraded your dev environment, it was 4 or 5 hours. I know in my past that if we had a change window that was over a certain amount of time, we had to go through a lot more than if we had a change window that was under, I think it was 4 hours. So the first time that I came across an upgrade in my dev environment that was going to take 6 hours when we normally took somewhere around 3, I started investigating why. And this is where kind of the upgrade center comes into play. So as you can kind of see in the screen, in the upgrade center towards the bottom, you'll see kind of the top 10 schema changes and the top 10 plugin changes by duration. Can't do much about the schema changes, but it does at least give you an idea as to why it's taking so long. If, say, there was a field added to the task table, that might take quite a bit of time, especially in your instance if you have a lot of records on task. But the plugins you can sometimes do something about ahead of time. So like in the scenario I was talking about, whenever I started investigating it, we had about 5 plugins that we could either go ahead and activate or go ahead and upgrade before the upgrade to kind of bring that upgrade time down. They were just taking a really long time to get those plugins either installed or updated. And we were able to take care of that weeks in advance without anyone really noticing, within a change window, of course, and then brought our upgrade time down to something that was more reasonable. And I didn't have to jump through a bunch of hoops with our change advisory board because we were within the window we were supposed to be within.
That's always helpful.
All right. Next thing I just kind of want to go over real quickly. This isn't necessarily about bringing your upgrade time down, but it didn't fit anywhere else. But it is really cool. If anyone has ever done an upgrade here before, you have dealt with skipped records. And while we've made a lot of improvements on how you manage those skipped records for upgrades over the past few years, this one came out in Vancouver and is probably one of my favorites. You can now create rules that have conditions in them, and they tell those skipped records what to do based on those conditions. So as you can kind of see in some of the examples, you can do things like, actually, I'm not sure I like any of those examples. The one I always use is notifications. We always got skipped records for notifications, but we had the notifications the way we wanted. You added your logo or whatever. We don't really want to do anything with them. We're always going to skip them. And so you could create a rule that says for notifications, always skip. Or we had certain individuals that would always manage specific types of skipped records. So if it was related to service portal, that was usually something I would do. So you can create rules for that as well. If it's service portal related, then automatically assign it to page. So it just helps you manage that instead of having someone going in there and manually doing it, which was, again, usually me, and it was not great.
And there can be so many. If you can filter out the noise, that makes it a lot easier to manage.
Yep, and once they're defined for future updates, it'll continue to run that action. So you don't see it in this screenshot, but there is actually a button that, you can apply anything that you've created to your existing skipped records, but then in the future, they will apply. So.
All right, we're going to take a little pause here to run another poll, give Paige a chance to catch her breath. And just a second, hold please, sorry. I need to get this done right. Okay, here we go. So want to know when you're planning to do your next upgrade. Boy, you all are quick on the trigger here. Look at it. These responses coming in fast and furious. So it looks like most people are in that 0 to 3 months time frame. We've got a few people already on Washington, D.C., which is awesome. And so a few are in that not sure bucket. We're hoping we can move you along, and maybe those of you in the 6 to 9 months, maybe we can get you utzed along a little quicker as well. So it looks like that's slowed down, so I'm going to end the poll here, and we will go on to our next section, which is where Paige is going to talk to us about her bonus backup production idea.
And the reason why this is a bonus is because it is not something that everyone can do, but if you're able to do so, so you have an instance available, typically this works for companies that have more than the typical dev test production pipeline, but cloning your production instance down to a sub-production instance just before you do your upgrade is definitely something I recommend if you can do it. The reason why is you can use that to confirm reported issues. So I have an issue that was reported post-upgrade. Is it really related to the upgrade though, or did it already exist prior to the upgrade? And again, that helps you with reporting on the actual issues related to the upgrade, but it also helps you prioritize things. So if something's existed for months, that's probably not as high of a priority as something that was actually caused by the upgrade.
I went too far. Sorry.
No worries. So then we have kind of an example timeline. You know, this is just a very, very high level example of what you might do. But, you know, first step is to perform that full audit clone and then schedule your upgrade on the sub-production instance that you did that clone on. And then next, of course, we remediate our skip changes. It's very important. And review the upgrade summary, again, to get an idea of how long the upgrade took and what you might be able to do to minimize that upgrade time. Next, obviously, before the upgrade, we want to start doing our testing. This is very open-ended. Use your company's methodologies. You may be using something like ATF or some sort of outside automated testing, or you may be doing manual testing or some combination of. That's okay. It's really up to your company and your policies. So next, the week of the upgrade, again, if you can, clone production down to one of your sub-production instances, and then we actually complete our upgrade. Now, we do recommend that you have some sort of post-upgrade support plan in place. That may just mean that, you know, your team sits on a call for a couple of hours while doing other work. Whatever that is, just have your team available in case there are any issues after the upgrade. And then, of course, 1 to 2 weeks after your upgrade, go ahead and resume business as usual. You can start activating those new apps and plugins, and then release that production backup instance back into your normal cycle.
And this is just an example, so there aren't like time frames around this because it's going to vary from company to company. Larger companies have a lot more overhead on some things. Maybe they have more regulations they have to check through and hoops they have to go through. So that's why this isn't more at a lower level, because a lot of times people ask us, well, how long does it take to do an upgrade? And it's like, well, it's not a passing the buck to say it depends, because it really does.
Yeah. Yeah. And I mean, there's so many factors that come into play with that. You know, perhaps your company only uses ITSM, uses a couple of modules in it. That's probably going to take a lot less time than a company that, you know, has a little bit of everything in ServiceNow.
How many integrations you have to other systems and all. Yeah, a lot of factors that go into it.
Yeah. So this is just a rehash of the tips that we just talked about. I really like this because it's an easy thing to nab a screenshot of, though I think we share this deck afterwards. But, you know, just those tips: limit your scope, do what you can to reduce your time to upgrade if you need to, and then the backup to production.
All right, so we're going to take a pause here for another poll before Paige goes into talking about the upgrade center. We're just curious how many of you are already using the upgrade center. Are you seeing the poll? Because I don't think you are.
No, I don't see it.
Let me relaunch here. All right, there we go. All right, again, everybody's quick on the mouse here to make a choice. Thanks for all the comments that are coming in and the questions. We'll get to those pretty soon here, so thanks for bringing those up. This one looks pretty split here, Paige, between people who are using it and people who would like to. The others are kind of on the lower end. So looks like the poll has slowed down. So I will end the poll and we'll go on to our next slide, which is a quick demo of the Upgrade Center.
All right. So I'm gonna steal the screen share from you real quick. And
Just a moment, everybody, as we make this transition.
okie dokie.
There we go. Pretty colors.
Thank you. All right. So first things first, when we say Upgrade Center, we pretty much mean everything underneath Upgrade Center. We're not going to get too much into upgrade plans because that could be a whole session all on its own. But the concept behind upgrade plans, it's kind of meant to replace, not replace, sometimes replace your update sets, and you can do things within those plans, and it's all packaged together. And then once you upgrade your next instance, those are automatically retrieved and applied. That's the very short version of what those are. Again, we could do an entire session just on how to use those, but it is something to be aware of. The three things I'm really going to focus in on are the upgrade preview, upgrade monitor, and then upgrade history. So first things first is upgrade preview. I have scheduled an upgrade on this instance. It is currently on Vancouver patch 7, and we're going to Washington, D.C., but I went ahead and did a preview for the upgrade that's scheduled. Obviously, as you can tell, you can pick any currently available version to do this preview on. It does not have to be the one that you are choosing to upgrade to. That is just what I did in this particular case. So it's showing me what version I'm previewing, and then it's showing me what version I'm actually upgrading to and when that upgrade is supposed to start. Which I've not refreshed this page because I didn't want it to log me out or change. So this may have already started, but here you can see, when I created the upgrade preview, if there was an upgrade plan, it would show here, and then, you can go into the actual preview details. But if you scroll down, you can see a lot of that information as well. So here we just get some general information about the release that I'm previewing. So if I want to go to the docs, it's all right here. And then we can see how many changes are expected to be made with that upgrade, and then how many potential records I'm going to have to review. Now it's predicted, so you may see that these change. And if you change anything between the time that you run the preview, obviously, and the time that you actually do the upgrade, it will change. But it is a nice way to kind of see what's expected. And then, of course, some graphs just around those skipped records. And then lastly, if I had ATF running, we would see any potential ATF results that would have come up, but we don't have that configured for this. Next thing is the upgrade monitor. I was really hoping that the upgrade would have started by now, because you would see something a little bit different if it had. But as you can see from below, it's pretty similar, except this is now not the previewed information. This is the actual upgrade information. So this is from the last time that this instance was upgraded to hotfix 1, how long it took, when it started, when it completed. So again, this information is really, really something you want to take a look at after you've upgraded your sub-production instance. It will give you an idea of how long that's actually going to take. And then again, you can see the total record changes. You can review your skipped records from here, and you get some of the same graphs that you had in the preview. And again, you can see your instance health. There is some additional information on the nodes. And then if we keep coming down, that screenshot that I showed you earlier, this is where it comes from. So you can, again, see the fixed scripts and how long they took, the schema changes and how long they took, and the plugins and how long they took. Again, there's not necessarily much you can do here other than have an awareness of what it's doing and why it's taking so long, but you may be able to do something with the plugins if that duration is a little excessive for your rules at your company. And then last, we will look at system upgrades. Obviously, this just brings you to a table, and this is all the upgrades that I've done in my instance. One of that green color is not easy to see, but one of the reasons why I wanted to show this, if you've done upgrades of old, this is probably the screen that you know and recognize, but it is also the same place where you can access the visual task board, do assignments, easily manage the skipped records. Honestly, most of the time, once I've actually done an upgrade and I've figured out how long it's going to take and decided whether or not I'm going to do anything about the length of time, this is where I spend most of my time, especially on those skip changes to review. So that is pretty much the quick show and tell of the Upgrade Center.
Right, thank you, Paige. That was awesome. I will grab it back here. And then I'm just going to take a couple minutes to talk about some extra tools that are available to you as you're upgrading, and then we'll get to the burgeoning Q&A and start answering some of those questions that you've had coming in there. So the first thing I want to do is just make sure that you're aware of the different tools that are in the platform. We have the Upgrade Center, obviously, which Paige just went over. We also have the automated testing framework, and we did a meetup on that one yesterday. There's another meetup on that on April 23rd. It's in an Asia time-friendly slot, so it's pretty late at night for those of us in the US. But if you are interested in learning more about using the automated testing framework, I encourage you to sign into that one. There's also Instance Scan, which is in your instance. There's the Upgrade Plan. There's Application Manager, and there's the Configuration Hub. So these are all capabilities that are within the platform, and there's a link there to additional information in our product docs if you want to learn more about any of those platform tools. And then in addition, on the community, we have a releases and upgrades page under the product hub drop down there. So you can come in here, and right now we have some of the webinars from the Washington release event that we had in DC when the release was launched. And then if you scroll down further down the page, you'll find some additional resources. So we have the upgrade kit out here, which it goes through each of the products and talks about what's new in each of the products. We have more information that you can get to about planning your upgrade. And then this is where the events are posted around upgrades that you might want to get to. And then there's also an area on this page to get to the videos, and there's a recordings of these upgrade sessions. And there's also a blog that we keep on there. So you can go in there and interact around upgrades on that upgrades page as well. And then we also, if you are an impact customer, you may have the ability to use the Jumpstart Your Upgrade Accelerator. And this is where the squad will come in and help you figure out how to do your upgrade. But this is only for impact customers. If you don't know if you're an impact customer or not, I suggest reaching out to your sales team to find out. And another thing that you could reach out to your sales team about is our expert services. If you're not already engaged with them, if you would like to engage that team, that's a team that both Jeff and I came from. They also have the ability to do an engagement with you to help you with an upgrade if you would like additional assistance with that. Thank you very much. I'm really sorry we've got to call it quits here for the day. We did have a couple more questions. We'll post a blog on that upgrades and releases page on the community with those outstanding questions, as well as links to the recording. If you want to join additional webinars in the future, here's a QR code that you can scan. We'd love to see you at some future events. And please don't forget to fill out the survey that'll be coming out at the end of the event, and help us have learnings to make this a better session for you. And just appreciate all of you coming today and all the great questions, and hope it was helpful and meaningful for you today. Thanks for coming, and we'll see you next time.